Oh my God, Dad knows. Matteo Ricci as a Jesuit in the Confucian court. I mean, was anybody else just like so in love with this reading? Because I was. I was just like, this is the best. Maybe that's because I'm like falling more and more in love with Confucianism. Matteo Ricci was, as I said, a Jesuit in the Confucian court in China. And what he describes, it actually really speaks to me of liberalism, of working functional society based on liberal principles. He talks about the administrators of the court and how some are responsible for challenging the government and, criticizing. And I just think that's so fascinating because it's like the Chinese court found a way, like, they acknowledge the idea that like truth is found through an openness of ideals. Admittedly, it was only people who had displayed their loyalty to the country, but still, it's just like a fascinating idea that they were like, we're going to create an entire department of government just for this pursuit of higher truth. So Ricci's description of the keepers of public conscience demonstrates a body of government that is, whose job it is to criticize, but their criticism is not considered sedition. He further talks about how, like, China is this country of limitless resources. They've got a large population, they've got a good natural resource base, they've got a strong army, and yet they don't see the need to go out and control and dominate their neighbors. And it's like if you're trying to hire a contractor. Which may be the weirdest analogy ever, but if you're going to hire a contractor, do you want the guy who's building as many houses as possible, as quickly as possible, doesn't really care about the quality, or do you want the guy who's willing to who's methodical, who's a perfectionist, who's going to build the best bloody house that he's ever built in his entire life every single time because, that's how he wants it to do. Like, what do you want? And, for me, I want the second guy. And that's what I feel he's describing in China, is that, their laws and their constructions of truth are meant to be they want them to be as good as possible. So they're like, you know what, we're going to do this and we're going to do it right. And we're going to have people criticize it and we're not going to hate them for it or take it personally. We're going to build a better society with a greater sense of social truth. And we see this when he says, though they correspond in some manner to what we would call the keepers of public conscience, inasmuch as they inform the king as often as they see fit of any infraction of the law in any part of the entire kingdom. No one is spared from their scrutiny, even the highest magistrates, as they do not hesitate to speak even though it concern the king himself or his household. They will never desist from their admonitions and criticism until some remedy has been applied to the public evil against which they are inveighing. Whoa. I mean, this is fascinating. I mean, we can barely get criticism in government today. I mean, people talk about the need for a public science critic for the government, and they talk about the need for public policy critic for the government, and people are like, oh no, there's no use for that, everything the government does is great, and it's like, or it would be too slow or inefficient, and it's like, oh my God, these guys so ahead of the curve in liberal ideology, so ahead of the curve, it's incredible. In a kingdom of almost limitless expanse and innumerable population, and abounding in copious supplies of every description, though they have well-equipped army and a navy that could easily conquer the neighboring nations, neither the king nor his people ever think of waging wars of aggression. While the nations of the West seem entirely consumed with the idea of supreme domination, they cannot even preserve what their ancestors have bequeathed to them, as the Chinese have done through a period of thousands of years. And this is what I mean. The Chinese are willing to hammer home, or were willing to hammer home the building of the best possible thing, rather than seek, the traditional show of power and foppery, where you go and conquer all your neighbors and subjugate them, and you don't necessarily bring anything of value or gain anything really of value other than very incremental prestige. It's amazing. So I just want to read you guys something quickly from John Stuart Mill on Liberty, just because I want you to see the link that this has to our own society and a text that we think is a founding document of our society when this is so different from us. So, from John Stuart Mill on Liberty, page 63. That mankind are not infallible, that their truths, for the most part, are only half-truths. That the unity of opinion, unless resulting from the fullest and freest comparison of opposite opinions, is not desirable, and diversity is not an evil, but a good, until mankind are much more capable than at present of recognizing all sides of the truth, all principles applicable to men's modes of action, not less to their opinions. Boom! Like, whoa! China, you're killing it! I can't believe I just threw a book on the ground. Okay, so maybe throwing the book on the ground was a little bit excessive. But, I get very excited when I read this because, we spend so much, well, in my degree, we spend so much time critiquing liberal philosophy and how it applies to modern day society. And I read Ricci's and it's like, this is a better version of liberalism than we are experiencing today in Canada. And it's incredible. I mean, admittedly, for them, in John Stuart Mill's On Liberty, it's all about bringing about personal freedom and about how every individual is entitled to their opinion. But, in China, it's about the quest for a higher truth, a higher uniting truth, that nothing but the highest truth is acceptable. That's incredible. It's just an incredible idea. Anyways, dinos, that's all I got for you today on Matteo Ricci. If you haven't read it, I hope you do read it. It's 3 pages and it's a killer read. So, yeah. Later!